We had a historical day here in South Florida. Here, we're doing this on Friday. It was on Thursday afternoon. Shohei Ohtani steals the show, goes 6 for 6 with 10 RBIs. I lost count on the amount of homers, but either way, he reached his 50th homer on the season. He has 50 stolen bases. A player for the ages, clearly, and a player we're going to jump right into and talk to here on our latest episode of Hitting with Holly. Here we are on Man on Second with the great Todd Hollandsworth. And Holly, obviously we've seen a lot of landmarks and benchmarks and historical moments, against the Marlins, and just had arguably the greatest player ever doing that here in South Florida. Just your thoughts on what Shohei did this week.
Well, I'll say this right off the top because, and I certainly think it's important to say it this way. What we witnessed last night was probably the single greatest offensive game that we've ever seen in the history of the sport. Now, I don't like to jump forward because we certainly want to see Ohtani, play this out throughout his career. He is giving us all the signs that he is obviously a player for the ages. He's off to a tremendous start in his career. And again, something that somebody would say, does he have the potential to be the greatest player ever? Absolutely. I certainly stand by that, but I don't like to go there before we get there. You know what I mean? And to this point, I think it's a snapshot of how incredible this young man is. Everything that he's accomplished to this point in his career is leading us in that direction. His contract is leading us in that direction, but let's get to the end of the narrative, 10, 15 years from now, and then let's dub him the greatest player that we've ever seen play this sport. But he is definitely in the middle of it, and he's certainly opening our eyes to think about, that we've played this game for well over 100 years, and that we're seeing new things again. And that's the great thing for me about Ohtani. You play the game for a long, long time, and you think, okay, I've seen it all, right? Every now and again we get to play like I've never seen that before. Here it happens. But to see a player transforming the game, at this stage of the game's history, is awesome to see, and certainly we need it. He's a breath of fresh air, and he's definitely exciting and well worth the price of admission. Wherever he goes, he fills the stadium.
In a day of specialization, in a day of load management, in a day of, we look at high school, we got pitcher onlys, we got obviously in college, we have, some really good kids coming up out of college that are in the minor leagues who at least showed in college they could pitch and hit. But we put limits on so many of our athletes. Shohei, not only, obviously, he's dealing with the recovery of Tommy John this year, so he's not pitching. But at least I like that he is kind of shattering the narrative or the mold that you can't do two things. You can't be a full-time pitcher, full-time hitter. And I mean, obviously, when he just focuses on hitting and he's the DH and he does what he's doing, what do you think that speaks to? Is he just such an outlier that he could get away with it? Or, should we be encouraging more from our players, not less?
No, we absolutely should be encouraging more from our players and not less. The players themselves are the ones who need to set the bar, not the system. And that's the thing that I do get caught up with and get bothered by at times, is that we simply, get to the stage where control is what this is all about. Controlling innings, controlling pitches. I mean, I just believe in everything. There's balance, and there needs to be balance. And I think that we've tipped in one direction where we control our players so much that we limit their greatness. And I love it when you see a player decide for himself. And listen, the Dodgers are at the forefront as far as our major league teams at managing pitch load, workload, both offensively and certainly on the pitching side of things. And they do a pretty darn good job of it. And so I want to give them credit for that. But with that being said, this game is at its best when the players are setting the standard and when the players are the ones who are setting the bar and exceeding the bar and exceeding the line and doing 50-50 like we saw last night. This is a man who certainly understands his God-given abilities. I think it's so interesting. I'm going to say something because he kind of resonated with me last night, and I thought it was, that's kind of an interesting point, and I'm going to save it for Joe, and I'm going to bring it up here. on social media, there's this fire with this drop and drive, and look at Aaron Judge's swing, and all this other stuff. One person who really truly has never been openly discussed is when it comes to swing replication is Ohtani. And Ohtani is right there. It's so interesting to me that we kind of leave him out of this part of the conversation, yet we always want to go back to the Aaron Judge and the dropping and getting through the strike zone. If you go back to last night's ball game, Joe, Ohtani was not in perfect balance really in any one of those approaches. Now, the barrel through the zone was there on time, but even his home run the other way, which was a breaking pitch on a pitch on the outer third that he took over the left center field wall, he was a little bit fooled, but he kept his hands back. And I guess that's really what I want to drive home today. We're all different. Ohtani, he's a freak of nature. He's a big guy. He's got broad shoulders, strong legs. I mean, this is, he's built a lot like Aaron Judge. But there's room for error in that swing. And what we saw last night in his 6-for-6 performance is that room for error. And what I want to encourage kids to understand about this is that we're not all built like Ohtani. We're not all built like Aaron Judge. You've got to find the best version of yourself and run with that. And the best version of us all is very different. Whether it's a leadoff guy, a small guy, a Louis Arise, whether it's an Ohtani, we're all different creatures. We've all been given different skills and different blessings in this game. And what I want these kids to understand is it's about maximizing what you've been given and going with it and running with it and going with it confidently and courageously and pushing that narrative forward. We're not all going to be Ohtani, but I think it's so interesting is the two things that he does so well is, number one, he gets his foot down early, and number two, he stays through the zone. And that's what Ohtani does so well, yet he never seems to come up in this conversation of the drop and drive guys versus these old school guys who are constantly talking about staying through the zone, staying flat, keeping your swing long. Tony Gwynn talked about it all the time. I mean, I heard it from him throughout my career. He was in San Diego, I was in LA. Every time we'd play, we'd always want to, all the Dodgers would gravitate over to the San Diego side to pick Tony's mind, pick his brain. And Tony's thing was just about staying in the zone long. There's just so much more room for error when you stay in the zone long. And we saw that last night. This wasn't 6 laser beams, rockets off the bat. These were long home runs, a couple of base hits that got through on the right side, hit hard, but on the ground, a long home run to left that he stayed through the ball on a breaking pitch away. I mean, this was just a classic hitting show in the form of a big man who's got the ability to hit the ball over the wall in anybody's ballpark.
Yeah. Can you put into context 50-50?
It's impressive. I mean, it really is. I mean, to me, the guys who are stealing bases now in the game, because we went through this transition, when I was playing, stolen bases were still a thing, and people were, doing it. It started to get away from the game a little bit. I mean, we went through this era. I wasn't part of it. I was part of it as a broadcaster more than I was part of it as a player, because when we were still playing, we were still trying to do it, even though there was home runs all over the place. It's coming back. The game has kind of made a way for, base stealers to take full advantage of that. And that's just it's a feather in the cap to Ohtani and to the guys who are running. Stealing bases has become, if you do it the right way, a little bit easier to do. And he's taking full advantage of that. He's a big guy. I mean, he's not the fastest guy in the field. We know he's not. I mean, he's not a burner. He's fast. He's probably a lot more like me. And in that, he's got longer legs. He knows how to steal bases. He's got a knack for doing it. And it's become part of the narrative. I mean, he's doing his part at the top of the lineup. And that's the thing. It's funny because we hone in on the home runs. We love it. Everybody wants to talk about the long ball and the 2 tape measure shots that he hit yesterday of the 3. So impressive. But he's also setting the table for the guys who are behind him. I mean, that's part of this game. And I was raised to believe that offense was constant pressure, and it wasn't always just defined by the long ball. Constant pressure is runners in scoring position, because most pitchers will tell you when you got guys on second and third base and less than 2 outs, that's when they're feeling the heat. When they give up a home run and they give up a solo home run, it's an isolated moment. It's a mistake. Something happened. The hitter made a great adjustment, saw the ball out of the hand, whatever it was, and hit the ball over the wall. boom, it happens. But when you're walking through constant offensive pressure, there's more pressure on the mound with guys on second and third than there are in solo home runs. Does that make sense? Right. So we see it.
Yeah.
You're living the moment. And that's what Ohtani certainly has capitalized on. That's why this Dodger offense is rolling the way that it's rolled this year. That's why it's been one of the better ones. They have not had, they're not having, the Atlanta Braves from last year kind of year where it just felt like every guy in the lineup had an 800 OPS and it was just rolling, just churning out offense powerfully. This has been more of, Ohtani doing his thing, Freddie having a good year, but not the best year that Freddie Freeman's ever had. Mookie Betts is having a good year, but he missed a bunch of time to injury. I mean, this is just an offense that has really functioned well on doing things, collectively. And that's what to me makes them so dangerous. I mean, really the story right now, Muncy's, he's on a tear as well. Guys are contributing. Guys have come over to the organization and are getting it done. It's a collective offensive approach right now that is impressive, highlighted by obviously Ohtani being at the top of that lineup.
Let me ask you. I mean, there's still 8 or 9 games to go for the Dodgers. He was already at 49. Do you think Shohei deep down wishes he hit 50 off someone other than a position player? I mean, I'm not going to say cheapens, but, it's like Vidal Brujan's just over there just lobbing the ball over the plate. And I only mention this because a few years ago in 2017 when Stanton had 59 homers, won the National League MVP, I think he had 2 games to go to get to 60. And the Braves they pitched him really tough. They attacked him, and he didn't reach the milestone. I'm sure Giancarlo would have loved to have a position player in a blowout game, just lobbing the ball for him to see if he could hit a 60 homer milestone.
No, I don't. Hitters, in my opinion, speaking from my own experience, and again, I'm not going to step outside of my lane here and start speaking for all the other hitters, all the other great hitters I had the privilege of playing with, the teammates that I had, and the great hitters in the game today. Every guy steps into the box with a mission. Every guy gets in the box with an objective and a goal, and that at bat is what it is. Whether you're facing a position player and that there's not that heart pumping maybe as fast because you're a little bit more relaxed. It just is what it is. You look at every at bat. I was raised. You never given a bat away against anybody. It didn't matter who it was. In fact, if I ever made it out against a player, man, it didn't really matter what I did that day. I kind of was like, man, I should have got to hit off that dude because he's a player and he's not a pitcher. You know what I mean? Like that's how our minds work. And you're looking to capitalize on anything and everything, that they have to offer. It's kind of like facing a knuckleball guy. A knuckleball guy doesn't intimidate anybody, but you know that you have a different game plan that day. You're facing a guy that's throwing somewhere between 60 and 70 miles an hour. The ball's not going to turn over very much, but it's going to drop. But you have to have a game plan as far as what you're going up there to do. So whether you want to give credit or not, I don't think it taints anything in my personal opinion. It's just almost like facing a knuckleballer. That's probably the best way to look at it because most hitters, most of us know that we really never took knuckleballers seriously, but they'll make you look foolish if you're not ready and you don't have a game plan. They will go out there and do what they do best.
Yeah, obviously great insights by Todd Hollandsworth here on Hitting with Holly. Please, everyone, subscribe to the channel. Let's help grow this thing. Holly, one last thing on Ohtani before we segue into something else. What about protocol? I was saying that Skip Schumacher's being asked about not intentionally walking Shohei. I kind of wonder, as a guy who's been a 40-year journalist and would have been in that room and asked a question, I don't know if I would have asked that question, with all my experience, because there was nothing that called for an intentional walk. I mean, because you're not playing in a playoff game. You're not in a playoff run. You're already down whatever the score was, 15-3 or whatever in the ninth inning when the homer happened. I think the final score was 20-4. So there was no pressure in that game. That was a scenario where the Marlins were right there in the wild card or early in the year in a close game, and Jack made the decision Barry Bonds wasn't going to beat him, like it or not. But to just you want an applause for not intentionally walk somebody because they're approaching a milestone.
Well, what is an intentional walk really at its root? I mean, when we understand it, sure, there's game situation. We understand it. Sometimes the intentional walk shows itself in different ways. Back before we had the DH in the National League, right? Number 8 hitters used to get intentionally walked all the time. It wasn't so much. It was just that, the number 8 hitter was more of a threat than the pitcher himself if you knew the pitcher was going to take the at bat. And so the idea behind it is that, much of what I'm getting ready to say is just really centered around respect and the respect of the person that you believe can do the most damage, whether it's that person or the person behind him. In games like this, respect is gone. You got to remember that it's not just respect for the hitter, but it's also respect for your guys as well. These are big league ball players. These are big league Marlins. These are big league, Dodgers. And to understand that. And I think in that situation, you would almost be disrespecting yourself if you didn't pitch to him because of the condition of the game. There's no place for an intentional walk there. That's absolutely ridiculous. Play the game, finish the game. That's the name of the game. That's what we're all about. We're about competing. Even in a 20-4 ball game, we're in the mindset that there's something to be extracted. I always looked at, blowout games like, okay, what am I going to get out of this? I'm going to have to grab a bat. I've got an at bat coming in a game that we're down 10 runs. I'm not just going to give it away because it looks like 99.7% tells us that we're going to lose this ball game. You're still trying to compete, and you're still playing to the integrity and the character of the game and the integrity and character of the individuals on both sides of the field. It would have been more disrespectful if you would have intentionally walked him. I think that would have been a bottle of fear, and that would have just been like, okay, well, we just don't want him to do it in our stadium, and that would have been like, give me a break. I mean, I think that there would have been a lot more that would have come out of that than to actually just play out the game and let what happens happen.
Yeah, especially when you marketed him for 3 days. You had discounted tickets to put people in right field.
Well,
I mean, that's the thing too. But again, I mean, I could go all day, and I don't want to bore the audience. But it kind of speaks for itself right now.
Right. I mean, let's just be fair, because I don't think that this is a situation where this is a calling out the Marlins or an indictment on the Marlins, in the sense that this isn't a conversation that doesn't happen everywhere Ohtani goes. Whether they were in South Florida or whether they were in Texas or in Anaheim or wherever, this is just clearly a situation where you're talking about a guy who's having a day. He's 6 for 6. He's on the ball. It's funny because you looked at the rest of the lineup for the Dodgers, and there was a little bit there. I mean, there was definitely some hits there. Everybody contributed a little bit. But at the top of the lineup, you've got this 6 for 6. I don't think anybody else in the lineup even had 3 hits. I think that there was a couple of guys at the bottom that had a couple of hits. But I mean, this was truly Ohtani's day. And, to his credit, he earned it. He went out there, he got it done, whether he was facing legitimate pitchers or player pitchers, whatever you want to call them. He went out there and just had a great run at it. And like I said, the two things that really just stood out to me, and part of what we do here on our channel, is the simple fact that I thought that there was a lot to be extracted even from Ohtani's approach. I was really impressed, because we have gotten into this social media bubble of, swing perfection. And the reality is that there's no such thing. There absolutely is no such thing. The truth of the matter is, when you're hitting, you're constantly making adjustments. You're constantly thinking along with the pitcher, and you're constantly trying to put yourself in the best position to succeed. And the reality is, it doesn't happen very often where you're just barrel on ball every single at bat. So there's going to be constant adjustments with your eyes, with your hands, and all the other things that you're thinking as a hitter. And I think we saw that play out last night. But at the forefront of it, as I said just a few minutes ago, the thing I love about Ohtani that every kid can take away from it, he's a big kid. He's a big guy. He gets that front foot down early, which with the front foot down early and the weight back, you're now in a position to pitch, recognize, and then react. Keeps his hands very high, which I love, because it's a tall entry into the hitting zone. So he's coming into the hitting zone, and then he's staying through the baseball. He'll have drop and drive. Say, oh, look at this drop and drive. Yeah, well, the pitch is below his knees, or the pitch is at his knees. You're going to drop the barrel down to when the ball is at your knees, because you're going down at a different bat angle. But my point is that when you watch him take batting practice, when you watch him work his swing, he is staying through the zone, he's staying on time, and he's got his foot down early. I mean, those are like 3 basic principles of hitting.
And he had 10 RBIs.
Well, and the Dodgers did a fantastic job of setting him up. He goes 6 for 6. I mean, I had a 3-homer game in my career, and I had 7 RBIs. But that day, the way that day set itself up, I mean, the guys were on in front of me. I mean, it was this similar situation. Yeah. And to that point, I'll bring it up real quick. And I'm not one for always talking about myself, but I even think because I only had one day that was like this. The day that I had 3 home runs, I was a Colorado Rocky. We were playing against the Diamondbacks in 2001. And my first at bat, I struck out. My second at bat, I struck out. My third at bat, I hit a 3-0 home run. We were coming from behind. My second at bat, I hit another home run. Well, my third at bat ends up coming up in extra innings. And Bob Brenly was the manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks of the team. Of course, the Arizona Diamondbacks won the World Series that year. It's 2001. Yep. So I've now homered in my last 2 at-bats, and I'm coming up. And that was kind of the discussion after the ball game, which was there was 2 outs. There were runners on second and third, and there was a base open. And Bob Brenly's response, which I respect to this day, was I had my closer out there. I had Matt Manti on the mound. And this is my guy, and I expect him to get that out. See, that's that confidence that I'm talking about. He had as much confidence in Matt Manti to get me out in extra innings in a tie ball game, to get me out in that situation, than he thought I was going to hit a 3rd home run. Now, it was my day. I got myself into a good hitter's count. It was a 2-0 pitch. Manti brought 97, and I got the barrel to the ball, and I got just enough of it to get it over the wall, and it coursed and hit a walk-off home run. And so I had a 3-homer, 7 RBI day. But all of those things kind of presented themselves in that moment. He believed in his guy. My manager believed in me. Buddy Bell believed in me at that moment in time, and knew, even with the base open, that he was going to come after me right there. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think we may have even – no, we didn't bunt to that situation, but that's the situation that presented itself. Runners on second and third, 2 outs. I think it was the 10th or 11th inning. And, he could have walked me after hitting the 2 home runs, and Bob said, absolutely not. I've got my closer on the mound.
Here's what I like about our channel and our show. There's going to be a lot of people today talking about Shohei Ohtani, but how many of them have their star that had a 3-homer, 7 RBI day? So
one. I have a feeling
Shohei had 3 more RBIs than you. Hey, I'm going to transition over. I hope our audience got something out of that. And obviously, we got a lot of young kids that are watching on YouTube and are aspiring ball players and people who play here in South Florida and throughout that are picking up pointers. And I really, we introduced this last week. We're going to do these kind of spotlight segments here, and when I'm out, I'm watching these high school kids play. I'm going to get some video. Obviously, they're going to be filtered on the Man on Second channel. You can see all of it. I encourage you to please watch and subscribe. And then we're going to, with Holly, we're going to kind of break some stuff down. Right now, we're on pitchers because they're more interesting to me right now, and I'm seeing some of our better pitchers, so might as well take advantage of them. Because some of the hitters' timings are just not there. I went and saw some kids. I saw some kids in cages. I'm like, I'm not putting that video up, But some of the pitchers are bringing it. So last week we did Jimmy Heward of Western High School. The video is up. I even made a segment of that. Put that up. This week we're going to talk to. I was at American Heritage and Plantation. We saw Dylan Dubovic. Keep an eye, folks, on Dylan. He is a senior, University of Miami commit. He is a pitcher and an outfielder. He plays right field. He's got a really strong arm. And Doobie pitched like 35 pitches, like an inning and 2/3. He kind of ran out of gas a little bit first time out. Holly, there are about 5 professional scouts there, MLB type scouts that were there watching Dylan. Obviously, they're going to monitor his pitching. I had him between 90 and 92. The slider was, I think I had a 79 changeup somewhere along the line. But here's Dylan against Monarch, and just kind of your thoughts on the kid.
Well, I like what I see. He's got a good frame. He's got a good long arm, and he's certainly got some velocity to work with. He stays very centered. He drives towards home plate. And again, remember, everybody, I'm a hitter, not I was the receiver of the pitches more than I was the guy who understood the mechanics. But I'll speak to it from the hitter's perspective, because I think that will certainly help. And I think this is something that will help Dylan when he advances. You know, he's going to get away with a lot more, obviously, in high school. His stuff plays. He definitely has a future at his next level. The one thing that I do notice, though, is that the ball comes out early, and I see it early. As a hitter, you're always in the position. Your swing starts when you see the baseball. And as you see in his mechanics, he tucks. He's got a nice tuck. He keeps the ball kind of hidden at first, but that ball comes out.
Real quick, Holly, when you say seize the ball early, for our audience that may not know what that term means, please.
Okay, so when he comes set, as you're watching in the video, you see he's making his delivery to the plate. And as he starts, he's very tall. He's got a good line, starts towards the first base side, but the ball comes out of his glove, and it gets, because he's got that long arm, it gets behind his back. And when it comes behind his back, see, right, I'm going to show it to you right there. See, the ball's already out. So I've already started my swing. And what we know as hitters, this is hitter speak, guys who show the ball early and the ball comes out early, and there's a little bit of a pause between me picking up the baseball, as you see right there, and the ball coming on its way, I've started my swing. See, so to me, he's probably going to run again. He's going to run into this against good hitters at the next level. They're going to probably feel comfortable against him. I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. There's that little click of a delay once the ball's out of his glove to where he gets it and he releases it towards home plate. So it's not an uncomfortable at bat. So let me explain it just a little bit better. There have been guys, throughout the ages, right? Even throughout my generation, guys who throw really, really hard. 96, 98 miles an hour, and, some of them even 100 miles an hour. When you show the ball early, the hitter has the ability to start a swing, and that's what it is. I mean, that's what triggers our mechanics. It's not the pitcher starting so much. It's like right there. So now my swing has started. So I am now in a position that before you've released the ball, I'm in a position where my mind's already functioning and I've already started my swing. So it's allowing me to get to my hitting position quicker. And that's what you need to understand. And I think that might be something he tightens up a little bit. See, because he steps off to the side of the rubber when he starts. Well, see that little step right there? So now he's opened up himself. He's opened up his mechanics. And now, even though he is still driving towards home, I naturally would start my swing. So his 92 to me, just speaking from experience, isn't going to feel like 92. It's probably going to feel like 88 because my foot's down early. And it's going to be down early naturally because I've now started my swing. I always use Cliff Lee as an example. And I had the privilege of playing with Cliff in Cleveland early in his career. And of course, Cliff went on and had a fantastic career. I think of an Al Leiter as well. Al did this very, very well. I faced him a few times in my career, and he was really great at this, which was hiding the baseball. Hitters can't hit what they can't see. And so it becomes about when do they pick up the baseball and when do they start their swing. So we've always seen throughout our the history of the sport, certain guys can get 92, 93 to play up. Some guys can get 92 and 93 to play down. Some guys can get 98 miles an hour to play down. And it really becomes about when does the hitter pick up the ball and start his swing? Because if I'm in my hitting position and I've already started my swing and I'm already ready to roll and you haven't even released the ball yet, I'm very dangerous to you because now I've seen you, I'm comfortable. And it just becomes about pitch recognition. And if I see it and it's not elite, because again, that's, listen, let's be honest here. There's a little, for the pitcher side of this, there's a little more grace at 98, 99 miles an hour. A lot of times they'll show you the baseball, but they're still throwing so hard that it's not a guarantee of success. But that's the one thing that I would just tighten up is is kind of what he does is he shows the ball early, and hitters are going to, without probably even processing it in their mind, start their swings. Like I would have started my swing maybe even a little bit earlier than this hitter, just because I see the ball. That's what my eyes are triggering. See right there, I'm ready to roll. So I've started my swing. I'm low, I'm down, I'm ready. Here it comes. And so I'm ready to react.
How do you, as a pitcher, how do you hide it a little better?
Well, it's just about angle. See, I would probably like to see him maybe not open up his step so quick. When he take right there.
Meaning that step going to first base right there.
First base, right. It's already encouraging me that I'm already starting to get peeps and, visual to his arm, his right arm. I'm getting a look to his backside. And so when we talk about deception with pitchers like a Cliff Lee or an Al Leiter, they kept it tight and they kept the ball back. And so when you'd see them take the ball out, it was behind them. So even though the ball was out, it was still hidden by their body. See, that's my point. That's kind of what I'm getting to. See, he steps to the side. Where does the baseball go? Watch. Move it forward just a little bit more, Joe. See how it kind of gets behind him. Now I see it behind him. It's the first thing I saw, right, when you sent me over the video and we were looking at Dylan. That's just the one thing that I would see he can tighten up. See, I'm ready to rock and roll. And the ball is still a gap away from being released. See what I'm saying? Yes. So 92, 93 is not going to play up as well once he starts getting to elite hitters, because he's got such good stuff and he's at a young, he's in high school, and these are all things. Listen, I'm not trying to be overcritical. I'm just saying this is part of the journey. We all figured these things out. I had a very different swing in high school than the swing that I had in the big leagues. And it was because I had to make adjustments. I had to learn how to do what I was doing. And he's going to learn these things. People are going to teach him that. But by opening up that little bit early, he kind of exposes himself to the hitters seeing him big, seeing him early, seeing him in a reactionary state. And at 92, 93 miles an hour, he's going to dominate high school hitters. But at the college level with an aluminum bat, I would work on hiding the ball just a little bit better.
Yeah, Dylan's a University of Miami and commit, and he's also a very good hitter. We'll get good video of him as a hitter, and we'll break that down at a future day. Also a real thirst to learning, so I think he'll appreciate, any constructive criticism. And it's again, Holly is speaking from authority and what these you players are going to find at the next level, and let's face it, you got the experience here of a 12-year big leaguer who was a former National League Rookie of the Year, World Series champion. So he's speaking from authority, and all these little correctives are very vital for players, because obviously, Holly, it's a game of adjustments. Yes. So pitchers have to adjust. They got to figure it out. It could be small. And again, we're working with 30 pitches with him. Maybe it's something that he does better in other outings. It was his first time out.
Let me say this, Joe. Yeah. I mean, if he would, in my opinion, even if he would just tighten up his line to home and hide the ball a little bit better behind him, his 92 will automatically start to play up. Like, I feel like, I would say this to guys. I know how to give you 2 miles an hour on your fastball, 3 miles an hour on your fastball, without even giving you 2 or 3 miles. It won't show up on the radar gun. It's going to show up in your results. And that's how it shows up in your results. You see my point? Because the hitter is not going to feel as comfortable against that. Guys would, reporters, hey, how did you have so much success against this guy? This guy's throwing 98 miles an hour. The first thing that would roll right out of my mouth, and anybody, any other great hitter would say the same thing. I see the ball early. We talk about Ohtani. Let's bring it back to Ohtani. Because Ohtani gets his foot down so early, and he's now trained himself that regardless of who's out there, that step starts early. He is automatically in a hitting position. He's in a great hitting position from the moment. See that foot? Before and this is the home run against the position player, right? So he's already in a position. He's got his toe on the ground. His foot's down. The ball's not even halfway to home plate yet, regardless of the velocity. All this is about is pitch recognition. This is like taking batting practice. You know what I'm saying? It's like, see the ball, put the barrel on it. Real simple. And oh, by the way, look at that great swing from Ohtani as he stays straight through the zone. Did he finish high? Yes, he did, but the swing's over. He's already made contact.
Launch angle had to be about 50. And not in a bad way. I'm just saying how he did.
Right. Look, he starts with his hands high, but watch through the point of contact. Let it roll. Boom.
All the way through? Okay.
It's all the way through. And then, of course, he finishes high because he's a tall guy. So sometimes we get caught up in the journey of the swing from the start to the finish, and we say, oh, well, this guy's got a big loop in his swing. No, he doesn't. He starts with his hands above the hitting zone. He brings his hands into the hitting zone. He finishes through the hitting zone, and then he finishes high again. That's not a loopy swing. That's a straight swing, because we're talking about start. Nothing's happening there. The point of contact.
Does he even leg kick, Holly? I didn't even, obviously his head's there. I can't tell. Does he even leg kick, or is he just kind of pivot and turn?
No. He doesn't leg kick at all. Ohtani has no leg kick. He's all about getting his foot down and letting his body work for him. I mean, that's the thing. Look at the mechanics. He even in that swing right there is really working hard to get his hips moving in the right direction. And of course, he's got light tower power, as we used to say. But you look at the hands. The hands are at the ear or even a little bit higher. He gets his foot down early for pitch recognition, see the ball, and then just take the bat to the ball. I mean, we get so complicated in talking swing mechanics all the time, but the reality of what we're trying to accomplish here is success on the field. We know that success is defined by, in hitting terms, barreling up the baseball, having good at bats, taking our walks, having productive outs. I mean, there are a lot of things that define good hitters, and Ohtani had his day. But in every one of these swings that I saw, including the breaking ball away and that he hit out to left, was that similar approach. Now, his upper half wasn't in the exact same spot every time. I mean, it's not like just you do the same thing over and over again. Any hitter will tell you, you get 4 at bats in a game, you're probably going to have 4 different swings. You're going to have 4 different types of swing. Yeah. But the idea is to stay flat through the strike zone so that you can find that room for error and ideally the barrel most consistently.
So there's the key right there, right, Holly?
Yeah.
The setup.
You see the front foot. The front foot has, he's already stepped, so he's on his toe. I liked that. I tinkered with that a little bit more later in my career, which I liked an awful lot, with the idea of kind of getting up on that front foot a little bit. As you can see, his heel is off the ground, because what that does is it kind of, when you push up on your toe like he's doing right there, it really encourages your body to stay back, because it, if we were to all stand up in the same room that we're standing on and we put our toe up in the air, what does it do to the rest of our body? It pushes our body back. We automatically go back. And that's, as a hitter, that's ideally what you want to do. You want to launch from your backside. You obviously don't launch from your front side. So it encourages that. So he does it. You're going to watch his heel's going to hit the ground and it's going to transition. That's the trigger. It's when I've watched it, and I haven't watched, every at bat that he's had this year, but generally speaking, when you watch his approach, his hands start forward when his heel hits the ground.
Let's see if we could capture that.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's what happens here. See, as soon as the heel hit, hands come forward.
Yeah. Look at us making little videos out of here. You can't get this on the network. And again, Holly, talk about timing of hitting. Obviously, people say hitting's timing. What do they mean by that? Let me bring Ohtani back up. But what do you? Obviously, there's a home run. So, what do you explain that the timing? To be on time as a hitter.
Right. I mean, timing for me, it's in the scope of seeing. You have to be in a position to recognize. So, we talk about hitting, every hitter's got that box out in front of home plate where he ideally wants to operate. Now, if it's a pitch away, it's a little bit deeper. If it's a pitch in the middle, for most of us, if it was a pitch in the middle or a pitch in, you need to be able to get that barrel to the baseball a little quicker. So, we talk about the hitting line, and basically for a left-handed hitter, it runs from, if it's an inside pitch, it's a little farther out. If it's a pitch that's on the outside part of the plate, that hitting zone's got to be a little bit deeper, because your swing is going to come through and the barrel, you're not dragging the barrel, but you're pulling the barrel with the knob. You're pulling the knob so the barrel's behind the knob. And so the barrel comes through. So ideally, if you're going to hit middle in, you're going to want to get that barrel to the baseball a little bit quicker. So you have to be quicker. And the idea is that because that's the quick position, that's where you really have to work towards and you have to work from. The pitch away, I used to have this thing I used to tell myself in my head all the time: hold. And so whenever I would identify pitches middle away, which was a lot of times what I usually saw, because of course most of the time I was facing right-handed pitching, but the idea was, or even on a breaking pitch, it was like I was always thinking fastball because I never wanted to get beat by it. And so I was gearing myself up for fastball. I was thinking fastball. I was ready for fastball until it wasn't a fastball. And then I would tell myself, that's when that word would go off in my mind: hold. And what I was holding was my hands, because, in the natural flow of your swing, you step and you want to swing, you step and you want to swing. And when it's an off-speed pitch or a pitch maybe that's a little bit middle away, ideally, you've got to have just that little gap in time. I'm not talking a full second here. It's really probably maybe half a second or less specifically, but you got to hold. You got to keep your hands back. And so the idea is step like it's a fastball in, hold, and then you kind of go with the flow on the pitch that's middle away or a pitch that's off speed. And that was just kind of a trigger word for me. There weren't many times I got into a box and I was sitting on a slider. I mean, the level of trust that these kids have today, because they I know a lot more of what we do in hitting is scripted. These guys go up with game plans. They know pitch percentage and certain counts. And there's a little bit more homework to do, I think, in their in-game preparation. That's why you see so many of our big league hitters. They run to the iPad, right? As soon as the at-bat's over, you see them in the dugout if they've had some level of success. Yes, they're watching what they did, but at the same time, they're watching the count. They're probably re-identifying themselves with the percentages and in what they were looking for. Our generation, we didn't have any of that. So in all the generations before us, we were always geared towards the fastball. I mean, the only time that I can honestly tell you that, I went up there and looked for anything else is when I was probably facing a knuckleballer, because knuckleballers were throwing knuckleballs 75, 80% of the time. And even then, I always kept in the back of my mind, he might try to throw a 75-mile-an-hour fastball right here, because not all knuckleballers threw 110, knuckleballs in an outing. They would probably mix in an occasional slider, an occasional fastball, and the knuckleball would certainly be part of it. But that was what I kept in the back of my mind, was that idea of hold. And so my approach to, like, say, a knuckleballer was I always just took a bigger bat up there, a bat that probably slowed my swing down just a little bit. So I still wanted to think, okay, he might try to sneak a fastball in here, and if he does, I want to be ready for it. But if it's the knuckleball, it'll help me stay on it just a little bit longer.
Great points. I love that about the heavier bat. I've never heard anyone note that. Was that common for knuckleballs? Did many hitters do that?
It really was. I mean, there weren't a lot of knuckleball. Tim Wakefield, Tom Candiotti, guys that I played with. There was there were a few guys. I think Arizona had had one back in the day. His name is slipped my mind, but I think we had like 3 or 4. There weren't tons. And of course is there even a few in the game today? I mean, that's a great question.
Isn't it the one, the kid on San Diego? Isn't that kid the only one?
But I don't know if anybody's just is he even a
Byron? I didn't think he's like 100%. I think he's like a 60, 70%.
Knuckleball is part of the arsenal, right? It's not just the arsenal. So we had a few guys that it was the arsenal, and this is what they did, and they would sneak in a slider or a fastball here and there. Still working around their knuckleball being, the story, but the idea was and I still teach it to every kid that I teach today and every kid that I talk to today. You never give up the fastball. Never give up the fastball. I can't tell you how many times in my life, you're like, okay, well, slider's coming right here. And next thing you know, it's a 2-seam fastball away. And then, now you're digging yourself out because you were setting up for something at 82 miles an hour, and it was 89 miles an hour or 90 miles an hour, and you're really late. So, it was always one of those things that I wanted to keep in the back of my mind was, there's the chance, and maybe there's a higher percentage that there's a slider right here, but just in case he throws a fastball, that's going to be my approach.
Yeah. I'm going to sneak another video in here. It's someone I didn't tell you about, but I did have it, and I accidentally put it in my little file here to do. Another pitcher at American Heritage, Talon Holiday, a kid I like a lot, North Carolina commit. Talon, not the biggest velocity guy, but, really good slider. I'm not even sure if this is a slider. It might be his fastball. But, I think that was a slider. And Talon's a really good kid. I was hoping to see him pitch the other day. The day after I saw Dylan throw, Holly, Talon was supposed to throw, and I think I saw Dylan on either Tuesday it had to be Tuesday. And then Wednesday comes along, and what happens? What happens every day at 5:30 these days here in South Florida? Lightning, thunder, and no baseball. And it comes out, and it just comes like that.
Right.
But Talon, North Carolina, he's a senior now. So this is his final year, but kid who's pitching 2 straight state championship games. But just kind of your thoughts on Talon, if you could see this pretty well.
Yeah, I can. I certainly can. I see he's got good movement right there. I see that little darting action as the ball's coming into the hitting zone, which is going to throw hitters off. I'll say this right off the top. I like his, I like the speed. I always thought, not facing it. He appears to me to be somebody that might make me a little bit more uncomfortable, because you can, as you see, after he picks up his leg, he accelerates. So there's that idea, just like we talked about with Dylan, where I can get my front foot down early. He seems to accelerate through his mechanics, which, he starts off a little bit slower, and then all of a sudden he brings it a little bit faster. So hitters recognize tempo of delivery, and without a shadow of a doubt, again, like we just talked about, if you're going to be kind of slow and methodical, guys are going to have at bats against you. They're not going to feel uncomfortable. a man like this, I can see why he has so much success, because if you watch, that front leg comes up, watch as he accelerates from right there. See, I mean, it's almost like the ball comes out quick. He hides it. You see the ball's behind his back. Where did the ball? I didn't pick up the ball just sitting here. Now, of course, we're watching video, but I didn't see the ball until the ball was out of his hand. See? And so that's where it's going to benefit him. His stuff's going to play up. And so I think that's what he's doing right now. So I've always been a firm believer, especially with young kids. The guys who learn how to pitch first and the velocity comes second are the guys that probably have the brightest futures. Now, the reason I say that is because they're learning the hard part first, and then they're going to try to add velocity through, weight training and mechanics and growing into your body and long tossing and all the things that pitchers do in order to obtain more velocity. More velocity is going to benefit him at some point. But what you see here is a young man who understands how to pitch, and he understands how to pitch already. And so that's why it like, if I hand him 5 or 6 more miles an hour, boy, oh boy, the sky's the limit, right? Because he's already got command and control of his arsenal. He knows how to pitch. He knows how his secondary pitches work. And now he's just adding to it, and he's already kind of got his roadmap in front of him, and he's well on his way. So I look at a young man like this, and I get real excited, because to me, it's just really more about, adding velocity as he grows into his body. His mechanics are tight. He's compact. He hides the baseball really, really well, for a high school hitter, because he's not going to make you feel uncomfortable necessarily with velocity right away. He's going to make you uncomfortable with the fact that you can't see the baseball. It's even jumping out at you on video. I'm continuing to watch this. That ball, you're really not even starting to pick it up till it's already out of his hand and it's on its line, towards home plate. So he hides the ball well. He's got good command of his stuff, and he gets results. So, I love this. Kids like this, these are the ones that make me excited. I love kids who know what they're doing and have learned how to throw their breaking ball for a strike, throw it in multiple counts, know how to throw a changeup, obviously know how to change speeds. And then the velocity comes as they grow into their body. The kids that I always worry about are the kids that get away with. I always put it in terms of this, and I hope it makes sense to everybody. If you're a 7-footer in high school, we know you're going to dominate, right? Because you're a 7-foot basketball player, right? And I used to always think of it that way. If you're the same thing and you're throwing 98 miles an hour and you don't do anything else right, but yet you throw 98 miles an hour and you throw just enough strikes, are you going to dominate high school hitters? Of course you are. You're going to dominate them. But if you don't work on your game, even starting in high school, the sky's not the limit for you, because you have to learn about how to harness that. Because the higher you get, even in baseball, 98 gets hit all the time. And you have to have an arsenal to go along with it. You have to know how to set it up. Very few guys. I always remember the Aroldis Chapman story, right? So Aroldis Chapman, one of the greatest closers our game's ever seen, throws well over 100 miles an hour, 102, 106. He was just absolutely blowing the world away. But there was a point in his career where he started to identify that guys were starting to put together better at bats against him. The game was hiding him in 14 pitch outings. And I remember there was a time when the Cincinnati Reds were considering putting him in the rotation, which was kind of this journey that was kind of starting in our sport, which was guys would kind of, they would use younger guys in the bullpen. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, well, they knew that the big payday was in being a starting pitching, and we want more innings from our best guy. But the reality was that Aroldis realized that he's best when he is going to throw 104 miles an hour for 14 to 20 pitches, 2 out of 3 nights. And that was the best form of himself. And of course, that's the journey that his career was on. And the Reds chose not to put him in the rotation. And I think it was a smart decision, because it led to, one of the best closers in the game. But the reason I say it that way is because the velocity was always there. The arsenal, the slider that came along with Aroldis as his career moved on, wasn't there at the beginning. And so he was going to have to learn this while, being a regular starter, taking the ball every 5th day, and probably that velocity dropping down, because now he's got to throw 100 pitches in a ball game, and he's not just the 104 miles an hour 14 times a night. He was getting away with that. When you see a guy only one time, advantage pitcher. If I see you a second time, it's a little bit more in the middle. If I see you a third time, it really doesn't matter who you are, advantage hitter, because now I know you. I know your mechanics. I know your release point. I know your arsenal, unless I've gone up there and just swung at the first pitch all night. But if I'm watching the ball game, I'm now in rhythm with you by the third time I face you. And that's what being a great starter at the major league level is all about. It's really very rarely about that first time through the lineup. It's about the second and third time through the lineup, because big league hitters know how to make adjustments. They know how to pick up on what you're doing. They know how to pick up on your patterns. They know that every time you get to an 0-2 count, you try to bury a slider in the dirt. They're going up there. They already know what's coming. See what I'm saying? Like, all of these things matter.
Yeah.
And that's understanding pitching. But when you've got an arsenal like the young man we just watched, you've got multiple ways to get hitters out. And as he grows into his body and puts on that man muscle and starts adding a few miles an hour, he is going to accelerate through the system probably a lot quicker than the kid who throws 98 miles an hour and just is resting on that. Like I said about the basketball, right? At 7 feet in high school, you're dunking on everybody, right? You just get him the ball in the middle. Yep. He's standing taller than everybody. He can dunk it in. But if that's all his game ultimately becomes, as he advances to the next level, people are going to learn how to defend him. He better have some moves. He better have an inside move. He better have a jump hook or something that plays along with his game. It can't just be simply you grabbing the ball and trying to dunk it on everybody, because as you get farther down the road, you get to Division I basketball, they're going to learn how to defend you.
Yeah. And Talon Holiday here. Talon last year threw a perfect game against Taravella. He really good kid. And, and like I said, he's already got the out pitch with the slider, and that could be a real heavy, and it's a late breaking slider. And because I saw that perfect game, I don't think he missed a spot. Well, obviously you're perfect. He didn't give up anything. I'm not even sure how many 3 ball counts he even had in that game. I never hit that. Obviously, was the best I ever saw him, but he was just hitting every spot. Fastball was right there, and then he got hitters in the slider count, and just they had no prayer. Then I did that video of him a start or two after that, and I think I discussed it either with Talon or his dad. You could just see the slider wasn't as tight. It wasn't as good of a slider on that particular day, but it's his plus pitch. That's just another thing just to keep in mind for our young players. The slider may be your best pitch, but like as a hitter, you might have a great swing that day, but you can't bottle that perfect swing.
That's right.
You may think you're there, but it's not. And the thing about video is that's how I was able to see it. You can see the slider wasn't as tight, but kids don't get discouraged by it. That's just baseball. You're not a machine. You're not the pitching machine that's going to throw 96 every pitch to this part of the plate, and that's always your challenge. Holly, just in closing, some great thoughts. I'm really enjoying, and I'm, hey, look, this is very rudimentary. I'm not a video guy doing this stuff, so I literally, as Holly was in the studio, I called up the Ohtani. I was able to put together the Ohtani video, so I hope our audience is getting something. We are authentic here. We are regular dudes just, tinkering around with this stuff, this technology. So you're not getting the high-end camera angles, but Holly, to his credit, is so skilled at, picking it up and dissecting it. And I hope our audience really got something out of this today.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's exciting times. We got fall baseball going on, and of course we got the playoffs going as well. So it's fun. I don't know if there's too much hype in Major League Baseball right now. It seems like the teams that should be closing the door and getting it done are doing just that. We don't seem to have that surprise team that, I think we hope for, that, makes the late season run or the late season push and, surprises us all and ends up in the postseason. Well,
the Tigers are potentially that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. You're right. You're probably, but
yeah.
I think the American League Central is the division I probably watch the least.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. Well, it's funny because I was talking to my son about this yesterday. We were coming home after the monsoon in Fort Lauderdale had started. I mean, it was like a hurricane. Holy cow. And we were leaving football practice, and we were talking about just that. In fact, he was like, "Hey, Dad, you've seen the Tigers," and Trey was telling me about it. And Trey knows baseball inside and out, even during football season. And, we were talking about it. I said, you know what, Trey, it's funny because even throughout my career, and, most of my career, 10 and a half of my 12 years in the big leagues were in the National League and we didn't have the DH all the time. And so, things were definitely different. But again, it's my perspective and how you see it. But the division I probably, even to this day, pay the least attention to is probably that American League Central. And, there's always one team in there. And right now it seems like it's the Cleveland Indians, right? The Cleveland Indians are this great team and they wow us because I think that they surprise us and wow us because we know they're good, but we never think they're as good as their record always ends up showing us.
I know.
Is that because the Indians are so good? And I've asked this question to myself.
The Guardians.
Is it because they're so good, or is it because the rest of the division is just kind of blah?
That matters.
So
that matters.
It absolutely
that does matter.
So,
I mean,
that's the American League East. It's always a different conversation, right? So now it's Baltimore, and then you got Boston. It's always relevant. But anyway, it is good to see. It's an awful lot of fun. I was really excited, obviously, to see Ohtani last night. I think somebody had tweeted out, somebody that I follow on X, and somebody was like, "Get your tickets to Marlins games." And this was before the series even started.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, he's right. But he's like, if you get a good seat in right field, you got a chance at catching Ohtani's 50th home run. And this was before the series started. And I kept thinking, boy, that's, it's so interesting. He's right, but I guess I just didn't really think about it. But as we saw last night, even at the Marlins game in a 20-4 game, which didn't have a whole lot going on, there was still probably 20,000 people there. This is a meaningless game for the Marlins. I believe the Dodgers clinched their playoff spot last night. Obviously, I think clinched the division last night. Is that right? I believe I may.
No, I don't think they got the division, but they're probably in the playoffs.
I think they're in the playoffs. Okay, maybe that's what it was. I did hear it in passing. But with all that being said, it really does show the star power of Ohtani, and that's what Ohtani does for our sport. He is definitely opening eyes in a period in which Major League Baseball is looking for stars. I mean, we have a few of them. I'd love to kind of see that collective approach, offensive approach. I'd love to see a lot of this stuff growing. I think a lot of it's negative on the hitting right now because the offense just seems like it's down everywhere you look. Strikeouts are up. We're caught up in this wave of what it is. But you have these stars, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and Ohtani doing his thing, and it really is good to see. So there was a lot of attention there last night, and boy, what a game. 10 RBIs, 6 for 6, 3 homers, 2 doubles, and a single to go along with that incredible night.
Yeah, and it's you were watching a historical player. So where he ends up in the ultimate game scheme of things takes us full circle where we started. Yeah, certainly going to put himself in conversations if he shows longevity. And I tell you, someone who is already established himself as our Todd Hollandsworth here on our Hitting with Holly. We got to kind of get out of here because, as you may know from previous episodes, we can't exceed 1 hour here on our platform. So with that, we'll log off with Hitting with Holly. And thanks to everyone. Please like, subscribe, check out all the videos, and more to come. We're kind of growing this. We're having fun with it, and we will see everyone in the next.